Uh, this reading is so lovely. It really, it helps us see how absolutely attainable being with the divine is. Jesus and Swami's interpretation, of course, just brings it so right into the human level for us. I just loved over this last day reading it over and over. And feeling particularly those last lines where he's saying, if you would see God, look for him everywhere. If you would know him everywhere. It's like, this is right before us. And just really such a simple thing to do, although it never feels quite simple or easy in life. I had a profound experience a couple of weeks ago that I'd like to share with you. And the story's a little challenging, so let me say at the outset that it was profound and ultimately very uplifting. So I want you to know that because it's a little hard to listen to the first 2 minutes. About a year ago, there was a family that was referred to me. They live on the East Coast. And somebody I know on the East Coast had them call me for support because their 3-year-old daughter had been diagnosed with a very aggressive form of leukemia. And this friend of mine, who's actually involved with Ananda, and this family is not, just had no idea how to help her friends through this. So, of course, she sent them my way. And so for the next year, at least twice a month, and sometimes even more often, I spoke with these parents. I never saw them and I never met them. We just had this phone relationship. They, as I said, were not part of Ananda. I never tried to get them to be part of Ananda. I really spoke to them, of course, from my heart about these eternal truths, these deep spiritual principles, really about that which we have to know about Jesus. They were Christian, though not practicing. But not Jesus the man, but those eternal realities that he came to share. So in whatever way I could, I was just with them. I don't remember much about every conversation. I remember the three of us felt very close to each other. That's what I could tell you, and very connected and in tune. We never used those words, but that was the feeling, a deep connection of the heart. The only thing I remember is the week that I suggested to them, to the parents, that they take their little daughter and they go out and they start on a regular basis serving. And we shared ideas. What could that be? I said, let's do something to help her get outside of herself, think of somebody else. She was going through some rather rigorous treatment for this leukemia. She was sick, and a lot of it was about her, and a lot of it wasn't pleasant. So they did that. They started going to soup kitchens, and they would help this little 3-year-old serve a bowl of soup and many other things. That's really, right now, in a very specific way, what I remember. Several weeks ago, it became clear that she was going to pass, and she did, in fact. And then about less than 2 weeks ago, I went to the East Coast at their request to lead this memorial service for her. And, I was anxious about it on the plane. I was thinking, what is it that you really say to a family who's just lost their 4-year-old child? And also knowing that there were going to be hundreds of other people there who had never met me, had never spoken to me. But I just had to keep telling myself that God would take care of it. And I literally mean that. There was no other rational answer I could give myself. And in fact, it was a deeply moving, very uplifting, love-filled, heart-filled 36 hours with them. That's how long I was with them. And somehow, miraculously, totally with God's grace, and absolutely beyond anything that the logical mind could rationally get to, there were many moments when I was with them where they were experiencing, I don't know that they would use the word joy, but their hearts were open. They felt calm. They laughed. They loved these people who came, most of whom would immediately break down in tears. And I was watching all this, saying to myself, you are witnessing a miracle. This is nothing short of a miracle. And it was. And I kept asking myself, how could that be? Then I came home late Friday night, and Saturday night I was privileged to be part of the graduation of our first yoga teacher training year that we just had. It was our first training. Saturday night they graduated. And I was there, and I shared a little bit about this story with them. And then Heidi No-Kyun told a story. I have to tell you, I don't remember the story. But the story was about a client or somebody who was taking a class from her who was struggling with something. And the something really doesn't matter right now. I'm not even sure she told us what it was. But what Heidi said to that woman, I think, as she was listening to her, this was inspired through Heidi. She said, but now you have yoga. You always have yoga. You always have your breath to come back to. Because really that is what yoga is. Yoga is taking the attention away from all of the external realities or draws or pulls and bringing it inward where eternal truth and eternal realities lie. And that's what the whole practice of yoga is. In this case, it was hatha yoga, also obviously very much about the breath, but all aspects of what we call yoga, all of the ways of practicing yoga are just about that. And Heidi said to her so beautifully, you will always have yoga now, because she had been studying with Heidi. And as Heidi said that, I realized that without ever teaching those people anything, without ever saying to them, these are our teachings, these are our masters, here's what Yogananda says, here's what Swami Kriyananda says. I never said that. But what they were getting over and over through our talks, what they were experiencing in their heart is that very core of who we are, that very center of who we are, that place that they could always come back to, which then put them in touch with, without the words, without the logic, a greater reality where they knew intuitively that they could handle this crisis in their life, because it took the energy away from the smallness or the contractedness of even this huge human experience, and it brought it into this place of the heart, this place of expansion, this place where we feel an interconnectedness with all that is. How do we get there? How do we do that? How do we find our way to that place where the finite just comes up against the infinite? And we call that superconscious, where the conscious mind, the mind that wants to say, this is impossible, this isn't happening, I can't live with this, I can't tolerate it, I'm in too much pain, expands into that superconscious mind that says, of course you can. It's the soul on its way, taking us to that place which is only the soul, through its power of intuition, can know. Never the mind, never the little mind, never as long as we're trying to live with what we typically call reality, with all of the ups and downs of life. There is no way to make the death of your child or whatever this woman was dealing with okay. You can't go from here to there. It's not the right tool. Yesterday it came to me, what if we had never discovered a microscope? What if we were trying to understand everything we see happening in the world? People getting sick, viruses coming, bacteria coming, these substances, water, steam, ice. You could just go on and on and on. But we only had a microscope that would show us things that had a power of ×5. We wouldn't know anything. We would still observe the truth of it. We would still get sick. All the things in the universe would still happen. But we'd have no way of knowing what was going on, though we couldn't deny the truth. And in a way, that is what our mind is. It's a microscope that never has anything greater than a power of 5 times. It doesn't tell us anything. We see all these things happening, but the mind is never going to help us make sense of it. It is never going to take us to that place of the superconscious reality where any of this works for us. Swamiji and Master tell us that there are 2 ways to get to this superconscious knowing of all that is. One is by meditation. We can meditate deeply enough to transcend the ego. We can do that. That's a very hard way to go. I don't know how many of us have had experiences of transcending the ego through meditation, though I believe most of us are working at that, and we meditate, and we feel a letting go, we feel an expansion, but we are talking about a way to move into that which is superconscious. And the other way is through service. The other way is by offering yourself into other people's reality. It's moving away from the Maya, the delusion of self-centeredness, of this contracted state. And it's taking us into everybody else's reality. That's why in this reading, Swamiji says, if we begin to serve the divine in everyone, we have an infinite number of possibilities and opportunities to know God. It's so simple. All we have to do is start seeing the divine in everyone and giving something to them. And here is what this reading tells us. This is why I love this reading so much. Those people who were chosen, and in the full reading, that I can't remember it right now, but how Christ refers to them. It's not the chosen, and it's not the word here, but those people who Christ said, you have now entered the kingdom of heaven, basically because you fed me, you clothed me, you helped me out of my prison. And these souls are standing there saying, when exactly did we do that? They have no idea they were even serving Jesus. And that is the beauty of the reading. We don't have to know anything with our mind. We don't even have to set out to do those good works for God, because that's the moral of the story. All we need to do is say to ourselves, let me remember to start serving. Let me remember as often as I can just to give to people whatever it is I see them needing. Because as we do that, as we express compassion, we experience an expansion of the heart. And in that expansion lies our redemption. That's what it is. We don't have to know that. We don't have to understand it. All we need to do is put ourselves in the position to allow our hearts to open, and we will be redeemed. It's exactly what went on in the story. And it's a beautiful tale for us to know. So I was thinking to myself, it's about to be New Year's Eve. And I started thinking about New Year's resolutions. I tried to ask myself last night, okay, you're 69 years old. What have you resolved to do every New Year's? You know, the only thing I could remember is that New Year's Eve would come and I would say, okay, I'm going to lose 10 pounds. Over and over, I said, I'm going to lose 10 pounds. The same 10 pounds I'm still chasing around right now. Can you imagine that I ever said that? I tried, thought, no, I haven't done New Year's resolutions for a while, thank goodness, but in my early days, that's what felt like mattered to me. But I thought, here we are, we're coming to New Year's. And what if we all said to ourselves, what I am going to resolve to do is to stay conscious of giving, of serving, and in that way of trusting and believing that my heart will open. And when that heart opens, then without the intellectual knowing, something happens in the world, like the death of our child. We couldn't think of many things that would be harder. And without us really understanding why, because we've been given to, because we've been asked to give, because we've rested in that state of love, because we either saw the divine in someone or somebody came up to us and beyond words felt God in us, then we're able to find an experience of deep, abiding joy, even in the most difficult moments of life.